and welcome to We Women Want. This is our weekly show where we raise issues pertaining to women. We celebrate the winners. We also find solutions and commiserate with those who need our support. Joining us today, in fact, the topic of today is very important. We are going to be talking about women and the law. There have been a lot of progressive judgments in this year. How has the women fared in the court of law? What are the laws that each and every woman should be aware of which work in her favor? That is something we are going to be talking today with our panel. Joining us on the show is Payal Chawla. She is the founder of Just Contract Us, which is actually an all-women law firm that specializes in commercial law and arbitration. We have Talish Ray. She is the managing partner at the TRS Law Services. And Ritu Dhuria, she is a lawyer who specializes in matrimonial cases, in civil cases, in criminal cases. So we have some very distinguished panel of women who know the law and speak well. But Payal, about this year, what are the judgments that you would say? We've had, of course, the famous abortion judgment that has come up in women's favor. We've actually set a global trend in that sense.
So I think it's a very powerful and important judgment, because post Dobbs, just after Dobbs came out in the US, and it kind of and I've always said this, that whatever happens in the United States, it is not really confined to the United States, because it then sort of follows a trend worldwide. So the window is between what is permissible is 20 weeks, and you can't go beyond the 24th week. So in the 23rd week, she had wanted a termination of the pregnancy. The Delhi High Court said, look, I'm bound by the act, because that talks only about married women. So the Supreme Court then said that this is, this violates the equality principle under Article 14, and there is no reason why it should be only confined to women. So the Supreme Court actually said that the words married woman would be replaced by any woman. The word husband would be replaced by partner, which is very progressive.
Yes.
And what's, I think, very important, but the court also said one thing more in that judgment. It said that the word rape would also include marital rape.
Wow.
So that's a very, very progressive judgment.
On that.
I think it's 2022.
Okay. But Talish, about this and other, judgments that you would like to talk about?
So I think, overall, I would first like to get into the picture of what the status of law is. And there are two things that need to be understood. One is the law that is applicable to women in this country, which is by far very, very progressive, short of the Nordic countries. Whether you look at maternity benefit, whether you look at domestic violence, whether you look at the medical termination of pregnancy and its interpretations. The law is progressive. The problem that actually does arise is out of the fact that the law as such is also in some senses aspirational. And therefore, it tries to bring about the social change that is there by giving the right to equality, by giving a right in terms of what is a right against domestic violence or violence even at a workplace under the Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act. So all that is there, but the implementation on the ground, as well as wanting to sort of agitate for it in courts, both of them, there is a bit of an issue in terms of either women don't demand it, or there is a lag in terms of the implementation of it. So that is one part of it. But having said that, our courts have been tremendously progressive. There is the medical termination of pregnancy, X versus NCT. Then there is another one that came out from Goa. The Supreme Court has put it versus the state of Goa, where Justice Hima Kohli came down very strongly, saying that what is happening in terms of prevention of sexual harassment at workplace in the backdrop of a lot of agitations that have been taking place recently. And she said that every body must actually report including government bodies, as to what they are doing about it. Then there was another judgment that came out by the High Court of Madras, which said that any property that is acquired both by a man and a woman during the time period of a marriage is as much the woman's work, even if she has been a so-called housewife, because that's a recognition of the fact that women's labor at home, even though it is not included as a part of the GDP, is pretty much a part of the family kitty. That is what enables another person to go out. So, we have had, of late, we've had a lot of progressive judgments that have come through, but we must also keep in mind that throughout, when we look at it, India did not have a suffragette movement. We got our right to vote as a part of the constitution, and therefore the courts have been repeatedly been very, very progressive when it comes to women's right. And that's something where when I sometimes see, and as ma'am was saying about how the courts across the world look at women's right, where there seems to be a receding wave that is happening. happening, whether it is the overturning of Roe versus Wade that took place, or other incidents that are taking place. We are actually a little bit ahead of the trend there, because we continue to have more expansive roles given for the protection of women, for looking at their role in society, within the house, within the office. So that's something that's always been a ray of hope, so to speak, when we look forward to the future of the next generation.
I like the words you use, progressive, aspirational. You know, law is also having these positive words, Rituji, which are added to it.
Yeah.
आपको court में what do you find, you know, in terms of the kind of cases that are coming, the kind of judgments जो आप देख रहे हैं?
कोई भी कोर्ट में जब केस उठ के जाता है, ऑब्वियसली नीचे उनको ट्रायल कोर्ट में रिलीफ नहीं मिलता तो हाई कोर्ट में केस जाता है, फिर सुप्रीम कोर्ट में केस जाता है. जो भी ट्रायल कोर्ट रीजनिंग देती है उसको नलीफाई करके हाई कोर्ट अगर कोई रिलीफ देता है, या हाई कोर्ट रिलीफ नहीं देता है तो ऊपर सुप्रीम कोर्ट में केस जाता है. हमारे इंडियन सोसाइटी में और इवन जुडिशरी में मैं अगर कहूँ तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट का जो जजमेंट्स हैं उनकी हमेशा से वैल्यू रही है और वो बाइंडिंग है. तो जब सुप्रीम कोर्ट कोई जजमेंट अपना देता है तो उसका खास तौर पे, और जब उसको न्यूज़पेपर में लाया जाता है, उसकी पब्लिसिटी की जाती है, तो आम जनता को उसके बारे में पता चलता है. और जैसे कि बताया गया है कि इक्वल राइट्स मिल रहे हैं, प्रॉपर्टी में भी डॉटर को इक्वल राइट्स मिल रहे हैं. देन मैडम ने जैसे बताया कि अबॉर्शन को लेके कि पहले ये जो राइट्स थे सिर्फ मैरिड वुमेन के लिए थे. ये सेक्शन 3 है एमटीपी एक्ट का, तो उसमें मैरिड वुमेन इंक्लूड थी. सिर्फ मैरिड वुमेन के लिए ही ये स्टैट्यूटरी जो इसका लैंग्वेज है मैरिड वुमेन के लिए है. लेकिन बाद में इसमें चेंज किया गया कि इसके लिए, क्योंकि अब लिव इन रिलेशनशिप का भी ट्रेंड है और उसको रिकॉग्निशन भी दी गई है डीवी एक्ट में. तो जब इस एक चीज़ को, एक लिव इन रिलेशनशिप को रिकॉग्निशन अब दे रहे हैं तो उसमें एमटीपी एक्ट में अकॉर्डिंगली अमेंडमेंट करना ज़रूरी था. तो ये जब जजमेंट सुप्रीम कोर्ट से उठ के आती है तो इसमें एक डायरेक्शन भी आता है स्टेट गवर्नमेंट को, सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट को, कि आप इसमें चेंजेस करिए.
गुड पॉइंट. हाँ.
तो जब ये चेंजेस होते हैं, मिनिस्ट्री में जो हमारे हेल्थ डिपार्टमेंट है इसमें चेंजेस करती है, गाइडलाइंस फ्रेम करती है सेंटर या स्टेट के डायरेक्शन पे. जब ये चेंजेस आते हैं फिर इम्प्लीमेंट होते हैं तो ये बहुत ज़रूरी है. जैसे अब मैरिड वुमेन की जगह ये चेंज कर दिया कि अब जो लिव इन रिलेशनशिप में आ रही हैं लेडीज़ हैं, नॉट लेडीज़, आप फीमेल उसको कह सकते हैं, गर्ल्स कह सकते हैं, तो इसमें अनमैरिड वुमेन को भी इंक्लूड कर दिया गया है. और जैसे बताया कि हस्बैंड के जगह अब
पार्टनर आ गया.
हाँ, एनी पार्टनर, जो पार्टनर है उसका. तो ऐसा करना बहुत अच्छा भी है और एक तरह से उस लड़की को प्रोटेक्शन भी दे रहा है. और एमटीपी एक्ट में जैसे कि हमें होता है कि 20 वीक्स तक और नॉट बियॉन्ड 24 वीक्स, तो अगर ये प्रेगनेंसी टर्मिनेट करने के डायरेक्शन होते हैं जिसको लीगल हम बोलते हैं, लीगली वो जा सकती है, तो ये बहुत बड़ा स्टेप है इसके लिए.
But Payal, you know, also what I like is you run an all women law firm. How is that working out in terms of, you know, the work atmosphere, the...
Can I be completely truthful?
Of course.
I really wish this message goes out to people that it's brilliant running an all women law firm, even an all women business, because it's terribly efficient.
Okay.
It's terribly efficient. Women come at a particular hour, they will leave at a particular hour, because there are literally these 3, they have to do their shift at home before they come in, they have to work, and then they have a third shift at home. So they don't have any time to faff and waste in office. Everyone does their work very sincerely, goes, and I was told that this idea is never going to work, because if you want to work till 6:30, but we're in business for 10 years and we're profitable. So
6:30 pens down, everybody goes home.
I walk out of my office at 6:30. Now what I do afterwards is my call. You know, I work the hours later, and I work in the morning because I simply can do it. But that it works, and I'm a litigator too. So I have to say, please try it out.
Would you be apprehensive, or you think it's a limited world, or you think it's a good thing to do, all women?
All women, so we
Workplace,
have
not just a law
about
firm.
80% of our workplace is women. And I'd go with what ma'am was saying. It is terribly efficient. I've also seen that there seems to be a bias that often exists for women who have commitments towards their own children. And there's that impression that, you know, when there are mothers that work, in fact, most of the people that work in my law firm are mothers, and we find that they become even more efficient, because the logic that works in our heads is that if you take a minute of my time, you're actually also taking away the time that I can spend with my children. So effectively, it becomes 3 minutes of the time in a combined setup. More importantly, also there's no need for a lot of understanding to be moved around. It's some things are often understood in terms of gender, so there's no explanation that is required. So I find that terribly efficient. I find it easy. Having said that, I am also very perturbed in terms of the fact that as I go to boardrooms and I go across to courtrooms, I see that more and more women, there aren't as many women, even though we have an entire thing about diversity in Indian companies. I don't see enough women on the table. And similarly, I also don't see too many people joining in terms of the hardcore part of it. And I think that's why ma'am was specifying. And all of us take pride in the fact that we are litigators, because very often women don't seem to be able to continue litigation simply because of the pressure that is involved, as well as the very long hours, and the fact that it is seen as, I think we've all faced those lawyer jokes, and women are a greater target to it. So I remember this one time when somebody walked up to my spouse and said, you know, you must be scared of fighting with your wife. And he came back with a reply which I often quote, because he said, she gets paid to take on battles. She doesn't fight for free. She's a very peaceful person. And I thought that, yes, I mean, that's one of the things, because we as lawyers, as women, we're very good at navigating those spaces where we have dialogues, but we don't get into arguments. There are certain codes, and those we professionally sort of internalize and then bring it on to our other fronts as well. But yes, it is a tough field. It is a tough field. There's no taking away, but it's also a field that very many women have flourished in. Because if you go back and you look at the number of women that are right there as examples for us, whether you go in for litigators, whether you go in for corporate law firm leaders, whether you go in for judges, they're inspirational women. And so we already have a space that's there where we can look up and say, all right, so if I manage to do great work, I will be like an Indra Jai Singh or a Justice Leela Seth or any of those top-notch, legal fraternity luminaries that are there.
I just want to say that the stories behind every woman, it's very hard, you know, and I don't want to underplay that. And one of the reasons for having an all-women law firm is to be able to create this space for them so that they can then take on the men in the outside world.
So it's like
so you at least have this one inner space which is sort of comfortable.
where there is no battle, the gender battle
The gender battle is
fought.
not there. You're then sort of trained to take that gender battle on the outside, because
So
that you have to do.
Power of the sisterhood, really. So, how do you find, you know, being a woman and a lawyer and the courtroom and within the courtroom, is there an advantage? Is there a disadvantage?
Yes, being a practicing lawyer, I feel that every lawyer, female lawyer, should be very much hardworking. No doubt there should be time limit of work, but as a woman, you have to prove yourself.
But
you have to study hard. You have to.
Your clients tell you that you're a woman, so you won't be able to give my case full attention. Do you hear this also?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Because people know me, they know I am hardworking, they know I'll fetch them results. So basically, when you litigate, it is the result which matters.
Correct.
How do you present yourself? How do you present your case? How well equipped you are with all the judgments. Whether this is, usually I like to quote Delhi High Court judgments or Supreme Court judgments, so they are binding too, and moreover they fetch you the desired results for your client.
Okay.
So once you get the results, obviously you are likely to get more cases and
Get more.
so but for this purpose, but for this purpose you must be very hardworking, and no doubt one has to limit the hours.
You have to actually manage your work-life balance well.
There is
balancing
look, let's acknowledge there is a glass ceiling. You have to work harder, and there is no old
Harder
boys
than
club.
a man.
Harder than a man. I think let's put it on board.
Yes.
And yes, so while once clients come to you because of our Advocates Act, there's no active advertising that takes place. Therefore, a lot of the times they come in because of reference, and therefore they've come in because there is some other person who has vouched for your
and
work
satisfied with your work
and is satisfied. So therefore they come in, but there are times, I mean, I have an unusual name. As a result, very often I get an email which keeps referring to me as Mr. And I've actually had someone turn around and say, but even your communication and your briefs sound like they have been drafted by a man. And I often ask them that that's an interesting perspective. How would you think that a woman, because when I'm at my workplace, I'm a legal counsel, period. I'm not my gender, I'm a professional. And that is a very tough one to get across to people, because either they are biased against, or they overcompensate. Both of which are uncomfortable situations. I don't want to be seen as a gender. I'd like to be just acknowledged as a professional at my workspace.
So well said. On that note, I'm going to take a quick break and come back. As you can see, conversation with lawyers and people in the legal profession are altogether another level. So we're going to come back soon. Thank you. Hello and welcome back to We Women Want. Today we're taking a look at women and the law. But we were also talking about some laws that have come in. Talish, you were saying maybe harassment at workplaces, or Payal mentioned that. How has that come in? Is there any judgment that you would like to tell us about?
Oh, there is D'Souza versus State of Goa that has come in, which is regarding the prevention of sexual harassment at workplace, wherein Justice Kohli has taken to task and asked all government departments to be filing in to the Supreme Court as to what are the measures that have taken place. Where laws are concerned per se, if you were to ask me, but somebody who refers to themselves by the gender of woman, need to understand that laws for any category, especially for women, get divided into 3 subcategories. One is that of your home. That is where your basic acts around marriage, adoption, guardianship, violence, domestic violence act, all of these come in. Then there is that relating to workplace. In workplace, there is maternity, prevention of sexual harassment, even contract act as for that matter. You need to know what your rights are, certain amount of labor laws as well that go along with it. And the third is an aspect which is emerging since 2002, which is the Information Technology Act and its various circulars, intermediary liabilities, because every professional woman, or even otherwise every woman today, is in some manner or the other connected to the online world. And that is a world which is just about as unkind as it can get, because a lot of the times people think they can get away with so much simply because they have the anonymity online. Correct. So therefore it's important to remember that then the criminal IPC, the Indian Penal Code, along with the Information Technology Act, all of that then springs into place in order to be able to provide a safe level playing ground for women. So these are the categories that it actually comes in, and each of these categories I think the courts have been very progressive in interpreting it, keeping in mind Article 14, which is the right, Article 14 of the Constitution, which basically states that all men and women are equal. That's it.
That's it. Well, there's a lot more for that. We can pull that full stop there. But Payal, has litigating rape become more compassionate, do you feel?
Well, those that come to the court, like Talishri was saying, look, there's a huge divide between having the rights and the law in the books, and what actually then, how many people have the ability to bring it to court. So that's the other thing, and the implementation. And one thing that I want to add to what Talishri said is really society. You have to, unless and until, and I've said this on many times before, unless and until we don't divorce the sexuality out of heinous crimes against women and just define them as acts of violence, none of this is going to change, because the law can only do that much. So you've had these wonderful, amazing judgments on rape. Well, some not that great, like Mathura, but over the past few years, definitely not State of Goa in the Tarun Tejpal matter. That was a horrific judgment, if I may say that.
Why would you say that?
Because I mean, just the manner in which they, I think, denuded the dignity of the victim by putting things in the judgment that were relating to her past, which the Supreme Court has said over and over again that you cannot do that.
This victim shaming, I think, is the first resort of the accused.
Exactly. I mean, what you're seeing in Manipur, in a sense, is that anything that happens, the first attack is on the woman. So even in cases of rape, despite the Supreme Court having said that, you will continue to assassinate the character of the victim.
Right.
even in for things that had nothing to do with the particular
The act at
incident.
hand. I agree with you on that one.
Yeah.
I
Exactly.
think I also want to bring in the double jeopardy that those that identify with the gender of women who may be within the category of intersex. And I think it's there that the cruelty really sort of hones in. I mean, they are not just dealing with a society that refuses to acknowledge that gender, even though the Supreme Court in Nalsar versus Union of India has actually gone and said that gender is a societal concept. It is a set of rules that are there, whereas sex is biological. Even then, we refuse to acknowledge their choice, and very often in this heteronormative sort of debate between man and woman, we forget that they also live through the cruelty of not being acknowledged, of being made fun of people turning around and saying, and very often I also hear, not just for women and other disadvantaged groups, I hear this societal argument, our society is like this. Let me tell you that when Ishwar Chand Vidyasagar started his battle against the right of widows to live a normal, dignified life, including the right to remarry should they so choose, widowhood was akin to being a walking dead. When there was agitation that took place for abolition of sati, it was deemed to be an act of God and being divine that you committed that.
Right.
I mean, if those men and women, when Anandibai went and became a doctor, or when Savitribai Phule opened her first school, society came up and said, this is not a part of our society. And today we sit here because of the Ishwar Chand Vidyasagars, the Savitribai Phules. That is what enables us to be here and having this discussion. So, society is what we make it. And society must change, like people must change. You cannot have it in a state of flux and hold it back. Because what is not a part of, anything that takes away the dignity of an individual, inconsequential of their gender or sex, is not a part of any society and should be discarded. As simple.
But the one thing, in actuals, when you actually go and say matrimonial cases, a lot of judgments, in fact, we have a lot of men coming on our show of people fighting for men's rights, also saying that laws are slanted in favor of women. I'm saying exactly the opposite of what maybe our panelists are saying. But women do have some advantage where the men,
Earlier, the criminal remedy was there under section 498A of the IPC. But soon the courts realized, or the apex court realized, that no, a civil remedy should have been available to the woman. So accordingly, this domestic violence act came up. So under that act, various reliefs are there which are given to the woman only, which are available to the woman only. So there are laws, statutory laws, which are available for the welfare of the woman, because we can see that it is the woman who is the soft target. It's everywhere. It's a recent violence in Manipur, sexual assault cases are there. So in everywhere, when the soft target is there, though we talk about equality of men and women, but it cannot be there. So that is one of the reasons why laws favoring women are there. So once the laws are there, it should have been implemented in the right sense, and implemented by the courts, judicial courts. So there are the judges are given special trainings for that purpose. They are made sensitive to that.
Judges are made gender sensitive.
No, yes, you can see in that way. So judges are given special training for that purpose, that once the relief is given, it should be granted, it should be implemented, it should be given to the litigant, especially woman, especially the child, because with the woman, it is the kids, it is the children who are associated. Usually we have seen in the cases that it is the woman who is the guardian, or who is in
but again, that is the traditional way. But now we are seeing more men also coming up as single parents, as this thing, or is the law able to accept this and understand that?
Oh yes, I think the laws are aware. I think the argument that comes in, as ma'am was saying
here,
here,
the Supreme Court judgments are there.
Yeah, there are Supreme Court judgments.
man too.
Yes, and I think the courts are fairly well aware in terms of balancing this. But I think we also need to keep in mind that how many people can afford to go to court.
As
May I
Payal
also
said,
just say one thing, and I want to go out on a limb and say the laws are, the use of the terminology laws favoring women is a bit unfair, because if you see the delta in terms of the difference in society between men and women, all that the laws are doing is trying to create some balance. And you know,
But see, Payal, you said not everybody can go to court. It's usually the women who are going to court are those who have that level playing field already.
No, I think a lot of people that go to court when you have robbed them of so much dignity
they have
that they
nothing
think
else to do.
they have nothing else to lose.
Yeah.
It is not because they are more privileged. On the contrary, you would be surprised the number of privileged women. When we have that privilege, you are able to navigate a reasonable settlement with your surroundings around, whether it is a spouse, whether it's your job and other things. It is those that completely lose everything, including their dignity, that they've been rendered in a position that they feel that they have nothing more to lose. And that's why if you look at the Family Law Act, for example, Family Court Act, which says that, a person can come and plead their own cases. So what has happened is that a lot of the infrastructure has been made in such a way that should people so choose, they can represent their own selves, which you see increasingly a lot of people doing. So that is there. And as well,
I want to say that the laws are not favoring women, because any other law, there'll always be misuse. There's misuse of PMLA, but when it comes to women's laws, there's this whole society that gets up and says that we need laws to now equalize.
So we still,
it's not privileged society which is coming to the courts. It is the lower strata of the society which is coming to the court. I have seen female which are even below poverty line. They are using
courts.
Legal assistance they are taking free. So there are offices in every district court. There are offices which are made to give free legal aid to the lower strata of the society. There are females. So it is not the privileged class which is coming to the court. Rather, it is reaching to the poor people also. Poor women is coming to the court.
Courts are the last recourse, you're saying, there is this thing that the women laws, if they are favoring women, then there is a need to it. There is a vacuum that needs to be filled, is what the panel is saying, for laws to favor women until we get to that level playing field. But thank you so much, all of you, for this conversation, and thank you for watching.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.